Revenge films.
My name is Sarah. I have an older sister named Helen, and we both still live with our parents. There's a reason that I still live with my parents, although I'm no longer a student. Helen was born with a disabled hand, and she has trouble doing certain tasks. I personally believe that my parents only had me so that I could take care of Helen after they were gone. Growing up, my mother always told me, "You need to take good care of your sister once your father and I are gone, okay?" Despite her disability, Helen was beautiful and smart, and I looked up to her. She was better than me at basically everything, so I wasn't sure that she needed me around to take care of her. I was an average person, and I didn't have any special skills or talent. I was fairly certain that Helen wouldn't need any support from me, and it bothered me that my parents always reminded me that I was the one that needed to take good care of Helen. After I graduated from university, I got a stable job. This is when I met my boyfriend, Ryan. A mutual friend introduced us. Ryan and I dated for 2 years when we started to consider getting married to one another. Ryan eventually proposed, and as soon as we were engaged, he introduced me to his parents. It was now my turn to introduce Ryan to my family. When I mentioned to my parents that Ryan and I were getting married, they had a big issue with it. My parents had the decency to be polite in front of Ryan, but as soon as he left, we had a huge argument. "If you get married to Ryan, who is going to take care of Helen? Don't you think that you are being selfish here?" They didn't seem to care about my happiness at all. They only cared about Helen's well-being. But I didn't give up. I was in love with Ryan, and I wanted to marry him. To my pleasant surprise, Helen told me soon after that,
"I'm actually in a serious relationship as well, and we're planning to get married. He's very caring and kind, and I know that he'll take good care of me. So you don't need to worry about looking after me, Sarah. I was planning on introducing him to you guys soon."
My parents were very relieved to hear this. They told me that they would allow me to marry Ryan after all. I was very grateful to Helen for this. A few days later, Ryan came to see my family again. I was surprised because he didn't tell me that he was coming over again. When he rang the doorbell, he told me that he wasn't there to see me. He wanted to speak to my parents. I asked him to wait in the living room while I went and called my parents. As soon as my parents came into the living room, Ryan got down on his knees and apologized to my parents. "What's going on, Ryan?"
I'm sorry, but I'd like to call off my engagement to you, Sarah. I'm in love with Helen, and she's the woman I want to marry.
I was shocked to hear Ryan say this. It turned out that Helen was also seeing Ryan. My parents didn't seem to care that Ryan was dumping me to be with Helen. They seemed thrilled that he was marrying Helen. I was the only one getting hurt in this situation. I realized that when you are in great shock, you become speechless. My parents and Ryan continued their conversation and pretended that I wasn't even in the same room. I didn't understand why this was happening to me. According to Ryan, Helen approached him after he came over to our house to announce our engagement. And Helen told Ryan all these vicious lies about me to make me look bad in person.
"Sarah looks down on me because I have a disability. Whenever her parents are not around, she always criticizes me. She's always bragging about her engagement to you and told me that I could never get a man to love me back because I'm so undesirable. She also mentioned that she's not attracted to you but is marrying you for the money. Once you marry my sister, we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other. I wanted to let you know about my relationship with Sarah beforehand, so you're not shocked when she criticizes me in front of you too. But it's always been like this between us, so you don't need to feel sorry for me."
She tricked Ryan into believing that I was a mean little sister to Helen. None of what Helen told you is true. I've never criticized Helen in my life. If anything, I looked up to her because she is so attractive and intelligent. But nothing I said to Ryan mattered. He obviously believed Helen over me, and I could see that he had developed feelings for her too. There was some truth in that I didn't find Ryan overly attractive. He looked older than his actual age, and he wasn't particularly good looking. Looks didn't matter though. I thought that Ryan was kind, and since I lacked affection growing up, it felt nice that someone cared about me for a change. I thought that Ryan's feelings for me were strong too, until Helen came along and ruined everything. Ryan believed every word that Helen told him, and he told my parents about what he had learned as well.
After speaking to Helen, I realized that Sarah isn't as honest as she seems. I wish that I'd gotten to know Helen before I met Sarah. Helen is the type of woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with. I was thrilled when Helen accepted my marriage proposal.
As I had predicted, my parents were happy for Helen and Ryan, and they didn't seem to care that Helen had taken my fiancé from me.
I asked Helen not to be here today because I didn't want to give you another opportunity to criticize her. I won't allow you to hurt her feelings anymore.
You just met Helen. How could you believe her words over mine? Didn't our time together mean anything to you?
Then show me some evidence to prove that Helen is the one lying. I'll believe you if you show me some evidence.
I couldn't say anything to that because this was not something that I had prepared myself for. I never expected Helen to betray me like this. Helen's beautiful and she's smart too. That's why Sarah's so jealous of her sister. I could see why Sarah would want to bully Helen behind our backs. Neither of my parents cared about me enough to hear my side of the story. They took Ryan's advice and kicked me out of the house and feared that I would cause serious harm to Helen. I had no choice but to look for my own place to live. I wanted to move on, so I poured myself into work to try to forget about my family and Ryan. But for some reason, Helen called me relentlessly. I never picked up her calls, though, and let my phone go to voicemail. I wanted to change my number, but I didn't have enough money to do so.
How does it feel to be completely alone in this world? You should have never tried to get married before me. Where are your manners? I'm the pretty one in the family, and everyone knows that I should be the one to get married first. Ryan fell for me right away. It was so easy. I don't blame him. Who would be crazy enough to turn down an attractive woman like me? Too bad you weren't born with my looks.
I was annoyed that Helen would call me just to rub her happiness in my face. I hated the fact that we were sisters. I considered deleting all of the voicemails from Helen, but then decided that I should hold on to them as evidence. The day of Helen and Ryan's wedding approached. Of course, I wasn't invited to the wedding.
Such a shame that you won't be able to see me in my gorgeous wedding dress. I'm sure you're going to be spending the day sulking in bed.
There were so many things that I wanted to say to Helen, but I kept quiet. Don't ruin Helen's big day by showing up at her wedding. You'll only feel depressed about the fact that you're single. This was another moment in my life that I felt my parents loved Helen more than me. I was used to it by now. The day of Helen and Ryan's wedding arrived. No one in my family expected me to show up at the wedding. But when I told the receptionist that I was the bride's sister, they let me in. I told the wedding planner that I had a surprise for Helen. She was more than happy to cooperate with me.
The bride's sister, Sarah, has planned a surprise for today's celebration.
My parents and Helen stood up in astonishment because they didn't expect to see me at the wedding. They wanted me to leave, but they couldn't kick me out in front of the other guests, so they quietly glared at me. I bowed in front of the other guests and began my speech. Helen, congratulations on getting married. I'm so happy for you, Ryan. I was born into my family because my parents needed someone to take care of Helen after they were gone. Helen's hands are disabled, and sometimes she needs support in getting things done. Helen's husband-to-be was actually engaged to me, but then Helen lied to him and told him what a terrible person I was. Ryan and I had dated for 2 years, but he chose to believe Helen over me. I came here today because I wanted you all to see Helen's true colors. Please listen to this audio.
How does it feel to be completely alone in this world? You should have never tried to get married before me. Where are your manners? I'm the pretty one in this family, and everyone knows that I should be the one to get married first. Ryan fell for me right away. It was so easy. I don't blame him. Who would be crazy enough to turn down an attractive woman like me? Too bad you weren't born with my looks.
The other guests were shocked to hear the recording. So was Ryan. Enraged, my parents ran over to me. Sarah, turn that off at once! But then, one of the wedding guests demanded that I keep on playing the tape. They wanted to know the truth about Helen. The crowd became restless. I turned over and looked at Helen.
Sarah, you're going to pay for this! Ah! Ah!
Ryan sat next to Helen, speechless. I hope that you all enjoyed the audio. Helen, Ryan, My lawyer will be in touch with you shortly to discuss alimony payments. After that, I left the wedding venue. I received a ton of text messages and calls from my parents and Helen, but I ignored them all. I let my lawyer take care of the rest. As a result of the audio that I played at the wedding, Ryan left Helen, and all the wedding guests left the venue mid-party. Ryan's parents asked Helen and my parents to pay for the wedding costs now that the marriage was called off. I also sued Ryan and Helen for their actions. Since I had the evidence that they needed, I was able to get the court to order them to pay up. My parents and Helen were shunned by our relatives after everyone found out about how they've been treating me all this time.
I can't believe that you would favor one of your daughters over the other!
You're a terrible sister to Sarah. I can't believe that you stole her fiancé.
After Ryan found out that Helen had been lying to him, he called me, but I didn't pick up. It was extremely awkward for Ryan at work because some of his colleagues had been at the wedding. Well, this is what you get for not believing me.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.